Good evening, everybody. We are so excited that you are joining us for the autism presentation this evening. I'm Ilana Gershlovitz. I'm the director of the Star Academy, and I will be presenting on autism, on educational and medical treatments for autism. And after me, we are going to have Dovi Blumeno from Stratfin Solutions telling you all about tax and autism. So stand by for a very, very informative evening. I'm an autism mom only because full-time multitasking ninja is not an actual job title. In 2003, my son David was diagnosed with autism, and we were told goodbye and good luck. Take out an insurance policy, not much you can do, unfortunately. There is a published study in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders that tells us that parents raising children with special learning needs and autism have stress levels equivalent to soldiers on a battlefield. That's why I'm so happy everyone has joined this evening, because Dovi is going to shed so much light on how you can do a tax claim when you're raising a child with autism and have many expenses on your list. Now, worried moms do better research than the FBI. And that's exactly what I did when my son was diagnosed with autism. I love this picture. That was me. And I'm sure that's a lot of the parents listening this evening. I was that lioness behind the lion cub, and I was going to ensure my son's future. To the parents listening this evening, do not give up on your hopes and dreams for your child's future. And between the Star Academy that provides education programs, the medical treatments that you can access for your child on the spectrum, and the tax claim that Dovi from Stratfin is going to tell you about, there is so much you can do, and there's always a solution. I wrote a book. It's called Saving My Sons, A Journey with Autism, and it's available from all bookstores. Now, let's quickly touch on the diagnosis of autism. Autism is defined in the DSM. We are very unhappy with this diagnosis at the moment because we're comparing apples and oranges. On the one end of the spectrum, we have a child who's completely nonverbal. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have a high-functioning individual. And the needs of the two ends of the spectrum are completely different. We are moving towards changing this diagnosis in America. The new health secretary, Robert Kennedy, is trailblazing for autism. And the criteria for the autism diagnosis is going to change because it has become obsolete. There is too much conflict on either ends of the spectrum. We know now that the stats is 1 in 31 children have autism. These are the stats coming from America, recent stats, absolutely staggering. We know that the prevalence has increased by 384% over the last decade. And if you're consulting with medical professionals, parents, you have to ask yourself if your doctor is actually asking the why question. Why are we seeing this increase in prevalence? Why is my child not speaking? Why is my child engaging in aggression? Why is my child not eating? Because if your doctor is not asking those questions, you are with the wrong doctor. At the Star Academy, which I established 20 years ago, we utilize a methodology of teaching called Applied Behavior Analysis, ABA. Methodology of teaching, data-driven, based on positive reinforcement, rooted in psychology. It is an evidence-based methodology, and it provides teaching strategy. It is the how do we teach. In addition to giving us teaching strategy, we rely on the ABA methodology for behavior management principles. For example, every parent has been somewhere in the community where their child's had a meltdown, right? So if we have a behavior, applied behavior analysis is going to tell us ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence. I have a behavior, my child is having a meltdown. If I do antecedent modification or consequence manipulation, can I change the behavior? My team at the Star Academy are experts in challenging behavior. We will conduct a functional analysis of every single behavior: anxiety, self-injurious behavior, attention deficit, that's a behavior. How the child presents behaviorally is coming from a place where they are developmentally skills deficit. And once you start analyzing the behavior and identifying the developmental skills deficits that drives the behavior, that's how you manage to reduce the behaviors we want to see less of. When people ask me, what do you do at the Star Academy? I tell them, we are childhood developmental engineers. We engineer childhood development. This is what our curriculum looks like, just a snapshot. It's a very comprehensive curriculum. It's an American curriculum. It is the most comprehensive developmental curriculum available to children on the spectrum with special learning needs or ADHD. We conduct a developmental assessment where we determine social, motor, language, adaptive, play, executive functioning, cognition, and academic, and we customize an IEP for an individualized education plan for each unique child on the spectrum. Let's quickly look at the nonverbal autism profile. We're going to have to teach them to imitate. Compliance, come here, sit down for those young developing toddlers that don't have compliance. Many parents consult with me on a daily basis and they'll tell me, my child is hyperactive, he can't focus, he's all over the show. What does that mean? That means he doesn't have compliance. If you don't have compliance, you can't learn. We're going to focus on their language skills. And many parents will agree with me and nod their heads and say, my child's a picky eater, help me. Okay. They corner me. They'll only eat pizza and popcorn. Well, Star Academy to the rescue. We will include a feeding program and we are going to help your child to learn to eat nutritious foods. Echolalia, for those parents whose children have language but repeat, we're going to help them move what they can do into functional communication. For the parents who've got nonverbal children, we're going to work on speech motor planning. We have refined our technique over 20 years to work with nonverbal children. My son David, who is now 24 years old, at 5 years old, he was not speaking, put him on a plane, flew to America, found a technique where we specialize in motor planning. If you can't motor plan speech, if there is an interruption in signaling between the brain and the muscle, your child's going to be nonverbal. And we know how to work on improving that and rehabilitation. If your child's nonverbal, they need an AAC device. You're very welcome to contact us, book a consultation, and I'll tell you more. For the children who are high functioning at school, the teacher will say they can't work independently in the classroom. What are we going to do? We're going to tackle the executive functioning skills. My child is distracted. He can't self-manage himself. He can't plan and organize. He can't sustain attention. Executive functioning skills that are missing means you're looking at an ADHD profile, right? A lot of kids on the spectrum have many executive functioning skills deficits. If your child has missing EF skills, they're not going to cope in a classroom environment. But the good news is that we can teach those missing skills. How do we do that? ABA is the how do we teach, and our curriculum is going to tell us what developmental skills to teach. Social skills. So many parents feel so upset about the fact that their children don't have friends or struggle to socialize. We have a very comprehensive social skills curriculum. In all our developmental domains, one developmental skill builds on another. And every year a child has a birthday. More and more is expected of them developmentally. So we're able to go back in time and find those holes in development. When it comes to social skills, they need to know how to pick up basic social cues, how to engage in a conversation, apologize, join a group conversation, humor and jokes. So we're going to teach those skills. In summary, what is our approach? One-on-one instruction, applied behavior analysis, evidence-based practices developed over 20 years, gold standard treatment. We have a leading autism curriculum that is our blueprint, and we are experts in behavior management. Our program targets children who have sensory processing challenges, oppositional defiance, ADHD, autism spectrum, anxiety. I know the parents who've got children who have anxiety or at their wits' end. We can help you. We do school facilitation as well. Now, the big question is, what learning environment will allow my child to truly thrive. Every parent wants their child to go to school. Every parent wants their child in a school uniform and wants to feel accepted by a community. When parents speak to me about school placement, we're going to assess their unique child and help you to determine which school placement is going to be the best for your unique child. We cannot implement one curriculum for a neurodiverse classroom. That's not going to work. The children are not going to learn to their optimum. So we want to tailor-make a program for each unique child, and we want to deliver that education program in the learning environment best suited to your child. Okay, so the options are you can attend at one of our academies. We can do school facilitation for you at a mainstream or remedial. We have school readiness programs for the children who don't quite have those prerequisite skills for school. And then, of course, if you are remote somewhere in South Africa, we can help you with online school. We can also run your registered homeschooling curriculum. A lot of our learners have Cambridge Learn, for example, and then we run their developmental curriculum concurrent with their actual registered school curriculum. If you are not sure where your child fits on the spectrum and you want a plan of action, you're welcome to contact us and book a consultation. I'm now going to move over to medical treatment for autism. Before I start, please note that this presentation is for informational purposes only. I'm a mother, I'm a parent coach, and it's important that you always consult your doctor. What is autism? A question you've undoubtedly asked yourself numerous times. Surprise, surprise, it's actually not a psychiatric disorder. They are going to remove it from the DSM. It's coming, okay? It is a digestive disorder. There are metabolic imbalances, and it's an autoimmune. It is a brain on fire, gut-brain connection. The gut is affecting the brain. We know that in children with autism, the microbiome, which is the gut flora, is compromised. They have bacterial infections, fungal infections, and if there's dysregulation in the gut flora, we're going to get a lot of behaviors, and their gut is not going to support brain function. Ask yourself, why do we eat food? We eat food so that we can extract essential vitamins and minerals that feeds the brain. The fact that autism is a gut-brain connection is not my opinion. This is fact. There are published research papers in support of the gut-brain connection. And this brings me to the next important point that take home for this evening. Psychiatric medication is not first-line treatment. Okay, diet and nutrition. This is my recommendation. I know sometimes it's very difficult for parents to try to correct the diet, but as I mentioned earlier, we are there to help. Remove gluten, dairy, soya, sugar. Why? Because the majority, and I confidently say, the majority of children on the spectrum. How do I know? We have published papers in support of gluten and dairy being offending to children on the spectrum, children who can't sustain attention. Focus on healthy foods. Eliminate processed foods. I always say if you cheat once a week, that's okay. But if you're going to cheat every day and you're going to get a traffic fine every day, you're going to jail, right? So let granny cheat on the weekend, but keep your children baseline Monday to Friday, nutritious food. Make chicken soup. 20 years ago, we flew to America. My son David was 3 years old. My husband was at a conference with a top neurologist, Dr. Martha Herbert. She wrote 3 books on autism. He waited 45 minutes in a long line to see her. He got to the front of the line and he said, Dr. Herbert, please help me. My son is 3 years old. He has autism. He's not speaking. What can we do? And she said, make chicken soup. I make a big pot of chicken soup, put it in the freezer. Breakfast is chicken soup. Out goes the Cocoa Pops, the Wheat Bix. Focus on nutrition, 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 nutrition. Moving on, pillars to treatment. Diet, good quality multivitamin, omega probiotics. So you want to balance the gut flora. Remember to always consult your doctor. Parents will say, I can't put my child on a diet. You absolutely can. Why? Feeding a picky eater is hard. Following a diet is hard. Choose your hard. Key elements of treatment in autism: food allergies, vitamin and mineral deficiency, methylation, immune, inflammation, mitochondria. The mitochondria is the engine of the cell, and often the mitochondria in autism is sluggish, so we need to support the mitochondria. Detoxification. Glutathione and autism. My son was 3 years old. We were doing intravenous glutathione to help him detox. We know that it's a very strong antioxidant. We know that children on the spectrum have toxins, and genetically, they're not always able to get rid of the toxicity. If you can't get rid of toxicity, what's going to happen? It's going to cause inflammation in the gut, inflammation in the brain. So glutathione is that garbage truck that comes every Tuesday to pick up the bins outside your house. Imagine if Pick It Up didn't come every Tuesday to pick up the dustbins, it would start smelling, right? So if your child can't detox and the toxins remain, it's going to interfere in brain function. There are 2/3 of children on the spectrum have glutathione deficiency, and a lot of parents report improvement in behavior, communication, and language when they put their children onto glutathione. You see a yellow canary on the slide. Many years ago, coal miners used to take with them a yellow canary, and if the oxygen levels were too low, the canary would pass out, and they would know not to dig deeper for coal. Just like the coal miners knew not to dig deeper, children with autism are the yellow canary of our planet, and they're sending us a very important message. And that message is that our environment is simply too toxic. They have impaired detoxification, and they are the first to be affected by toxins in the environment. Aggression. A lot of parents know what this feels like, to be on the end of aggression. I want to encourage you that if your child is engaging in aggression and self-injurious behavior, please contact a neurologist and conduct an MRI and an EEG for sure. You can't just do a 15-minute EEG. You need to do a 24-hour EEG to get a proper snapshot. But it took me 5 years before I realized that my son David had self-injurious behavior from seizure activity. So what do we do when our child has aggression? We go to psychiatric medication. Psychiatric medication has its place, but please look at the slide. Look at the fact that constipation can cause aggression. Vitamin and mineral deficiency can cause aggression. Low blood sugar can cause aggression. Investigate these issues. You're welcome to book a consultation with me, and I can guide you. Medical causes of speech issues in autism. Parents all want more speech. And a lot of you have heard about the folinic acid, cerebral folate deficiency, supplementing folate. There's a group of children who are folate deficient, and when we supplement the folate, we see an improvement. Supplements that have been proven to help alleviate speech issues in autism, definitely vitamin B12, given subcutaneously, injectable. You can research the paper of Dr. Newbrander. Vitamin D3, very, very important for speech and autism as well. Folinic acid, your vitamin B12, your vitamin D3. Your child is not speaking for a reason. There are root causes that you can identify and treat. How much time? Medical causes of anxiety, systematic chronic inflammation, PANS and PANDAS. I'm going to touch on that very briefly because I've been given a 3-minute cue, so I've not got that much longer to go, but you're welcome to book a consultation with me, and I can take you over any of this, and we can work out a plan and a way forward. I'll also make recommendations for you in terms of which medical professionals to consult. We can also talk about your child's education program. But medical causes of anxiety can also be cerebral folate deficiency and elevated glutamate in the brain. My son David improves when I give him antihistamines. Also, a treatment for ADHD, discuss with your pediatrician or your doctor antihistamines for ADHD. Treatments for anxiety, long list on the screen. My son specifically would respond to quercetin. It's a wonderful anti-inflammatory and anti-allergy. It works for a lot of kids. Remember, every child's different, and please always make sure to consult your doctor. There are a lot of kids on the spectrum that have yeast overgrowth. There are behavioral symptoms that are being caused by the yeast overgrowth in the gut. This requires investigation. Often they're giggling, they're laughing, it appears like they're drunk. I want to encourage parents to conduct an organic acid test. It's a urine test. It has 76 organic acids that are easy to collect in the urine sample. It's going to also give us an indication of the child's neurotransmitter balance, dopamine, serotonin, and so forth. We're going to look at their nutritional status. There is a laboratory in South Africa called Biometrics Labs that conducts this. Now, sleep issues in autism, long list: reflux, melatonin, food sensitivity, gut dysbiosis. There are underlying issues that can be treated that's causing your child not to sleep. PANS and PANDAS. Every single child who's been diagnosed with an autism diagnosis must get an investigation into whether or not they have PANS or PANDAS. Pediatric autoimmune neuropsychotic syndrome. PANDAS is associated with a streptococcus infection. I'm running out of time. We can go over this. There are many treatments for PANS and PANDAS. There are natural treatments as well. I recommend Demystifying PANS and PANDAS, book by Nancy O'Hara, available on Amazon. Sensory issues in the gut. We've run out of time for that, but the only way to treat sensory issues is to treat the gut and deficiency. Okay, so picky eater, missing zinc, sensitive to light, magnesium and zinc deficiency. I'm going to have to flick through my slides, and I am just going to leave you with a couple of motivational quotes. Hope is the best medicine of all, so please find ways to keep your hope alive. When you can't go in through a door, go in through a window. Autism broke the wrong parts of me. It broke my wings and forgot I had claws. Gratitude is glitter for your soul and a magnet for miracles. When you're grateful for things in your life, even when it seems gloomy and dark, you'll be so surprised by the blessings that come into your life. And when life gives you lemons, make orange juice and leave the world wondering how you did it. Parents, don't wait for the storm to pass. Join us for a walk in the rain. Thank you so much. And over to Dovi Blumeno from Stratfin, who's going to talk to you about autism and tax.
Thank you, Lorna. That was really, really inspirational. And my favorite part was actually the quotes at the end. They were really moving. I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to go straight into it. Dokes, Seki. So, dear fellow parents, it's an honor to be sharing my knowledge on the financial part of autism. Obviously, there's so much that parents navigating autism have to deal with, and if oftentimes when there's financial liberty and the means to getting the right treatment that Ilana's been talking about, and that many other doctors and professionals say your children require, it can really make a very significant difference. So if this helps parents tonight, that gives me a lot of joy. And I named the topic "Stop Missing Out on Medical Tax Refunds" because I've seen how many families are unfamiliar with how the tax laws go in terms of rebates when it comes to spending money on medical conditions. And autism is one of the highest qualifying medical rebate condition. So tonight we're going to discuss what you can claim, who qualifies for the claim, and how at Stratfin we assist families. A little bit about Stratfin. Stratfin was founded around 10 years ago. Our CEO Ilan Rabinowitz, who will be doing the Q&A at the end, has got about 20 years of tax experience, and we've really gone to market and brought the best tax solutions that we've seen on company level, in payroll, and in individual tax. And our medical rebate is definitely our most sought after solution. We've helped over close to 1,000 families in the last year, and 10% of our clients, which is quite a high ratio, are parents with autism. So it's when the opportunity came to do a webinar together with Ilana, it really gave me a lot of joy, because I know how relevant this point is. So just a little bit about how tax rebates work, and I'm going to go into how medical tax rebates work without medical conditions, and then we're going to discuss how a medical condition like autism can really change the game when it comes to your medical rebates. And I'm going to go into a little bit of theory, and the take homes will be very clear. So if you do lose me in the theory, not to worry. I'm going to try to be as clear as possible, but I do know finances isn't everyone's favorite topic, and it can become complex. So I'm going to simplify it as best as I can. What happens is every taxpayer in South Africa is eligible for medical rebate if they have a medical aid or paying for medical expenses. That medical rebate is broken up into two sections in the Income Tax Act, Section 6A and Section 6B. Your Section 6A is a very simple rebate. Every person that you are covering that's on the medical aid as a taxpayer gets 300 Rand per month per person on the medical aid. So say you have a family of 4, mom, dad, and 2 children, you'll be getting roughly 1,200 Rand times 12, which is about 14,400 Rand back in your medical rebate when you do your tax return. So what that means is, say you or your company's been paying tax every single month between March 2025 and Feb 2026. Now in June, this season, June, July, August, tax season, you will get back a medical rebate as the main member and the person paying for your medical aid. Then you get your Section 6B. And over here, everyone can get between roughly 20% of the medical spend and 0% of your medical spend back. And that's very dependent on how much you earn. SARS, if I can use the word, discriminate against high earners, and the more you earn, the less you'll get back in your Section 6B. So what's important to know is that because there's a Section 6A, which that's flat, that's very simple. Then you have your Section 6B, which gives you a percentage back of your medical aid. And once again, this is irrespective of any medical condition. Any South African taxpayer paying for a medical aid, paying for medical bills, gets back a percentage. And already over here, there's 2 take homes that come to mind. Take home number 1 is, because you're getting a percentage back, and that percentage may be 5%, maybe 10%, maybe 20%. It's important to always submit everything to your medical aid, because your medical aid will then act as your logbook for medical spend. And even if they don't cover it themselves, at the end of the tax year, they'll give SARS a medical aid tax certificate in your name, and that medical aid tax certificate will have in it all your medical contributions, which comes to X, and then your out-of-pocket expenses, which comes to Y. And that's very, very important to know that you're getting a percentage back. And because it's a percentage, it's very important that SARS know about all your medical expenses. And the easiest way to do that is make sure to submit everything to the medical aid, so that it all will appear on your medical aid tax certificate, and SARS can give you a percentage of that back. Another important point with this in mind is that make sure that preferably the main member of the medical aid is the taxpayer. What I've seen in many families, say the one spouse is a taxpayer and our spouse is not a taxpayer, and because people are unfamiliar with medical credits and that they can get a percentage back, they often put the main member as the person who's not the main member, who's not the taxpayer, and then can often end up with getting 0 rebate. So it's very important to always make sure the main member of the medical aid is also the taxpayer. And in the event that the main member is not the taxpayer, it's important that the taxpayer is the one who's paying for the medical aid, because then you can still get your medical rebate. But if the person paying for the medical aid is not a taxpayer, obviously there will not be a rebate. SARS is giving you back a percentage of the money that you've paid them. If you haven't paid them any money, obviously you cannot claim any money. It's a medical rebate. So that's important to just understand that. And the last point, before we get to the much more exciting part of tonight's webinar, is that if you are paying for a family member's medical aid, say you're paying for your parents' medical aid, and they're the main member, or a child who's over the age of 21 and they're the main member of their own account, if you are paying for the medical aid, you can get back a percentage of that. So that is super, super important. 3 take-homes before we even get to the interplay between medical conditions and how they really ramp up your medical rebate. The first point is make sure to submit everything to your medical aid so that you'll get a percentage of that back. Number 2, make sure that the taxpayer is the one who's paying for the medical aid and paying for the medical expenses, so you can get that they're going to be eligible for the medical rebate. And number 3, if you are paying for anyone else's medical aid, you are able to claim that amount in your tax return, percentage of that as well. So that's very, very important. And if you haven't done this yet, you can still do this in this coming financial year. But I will talk about at the end how at Stratfin we've had much more than a few, many examples and cases where we were able to retroactively dig up what's happened in the past years and fix it up and get back significant rebates for families when it wasn't done right. And we'll talk about that towards the end. Okay, now what happens is as follows. When there's someone in the family with a medical condition, and I know we are talking about autism tonight as the primary medical condition, but I'm going to go through all the medical conditions because knowledge is power. The more you know, you can help family, you can help friends, and I'm going to go through the 6 categories that SARS recognize as a medical qualifying condition. Every category, one needs to meet moderate to severe limitation in your day-to-day life. Moderate as opposed to mild, but moderate also does not need to be severe. If a person is affected moderately, whether socially or at school or at work, because of one of these 6 categories, one is able to qualify for additional medical rebate, which is what we're going to talk about shortly. So the first category, intellectual, that's obviously going to be the remedial learners, autism in many cases, and any other limitation in a person's intellectual ability. And once again, if it's a moderate limitation, does not need to be severe. SARS recognize that as a qualifying medical condition. Second one is vision. Vision is hard to really qualify on because SARS say that you have to have done your maximum rectification, which means you've gotten your best pair of glasses, you've seen the best optometrist, and you still are being limited in your vision in one way or another in your day-to-day life. Communication, you have your non-verbals, apraxia, and even someone who's got a lisp that's affecting their ability to communicate. They're not communicating how they're feeling or what they're thinking or what they're experiencing as they should because of some sort of limitation in their communication. That is going to be a qualifying condition in the communication category. Physical, there's many examples which can fall under physical. Sleep apnea, any limitation in your physical ability, cancer, and many other examples. We've even had many qualifying cases of rheumatoid arthritis, a person not able to drive, and there's many examples which can fall under physical. Once again, the basic idea is that someone's limited in their physical health in a way that is affecting them in their day-to-day life on a moderate level. Mental health, here you have your anxiety, ADHD, depression, and anything else which can fall under mental health. And lastly, hearing loss, very self-explanatory. But once again, it does not need to be a severe level of hearing loss. A moderate level of hearing loss would qualify for a medical condition. Important to note, it doesn't matter if you tick one or all six or two or three of these medical conditions, the outcome is exactly the same. And it also doesn't matter if it's one person in the family or two people in the family. Either way, it can unlock tremendous amount of money and medical rebates when it comes to your tax return. And I'm going to go into that right now. So you have a family that ticks one of the boxes. There's someone in the family with a moderate to severe medical condition in one of those six categories that we discussed. What will happen now is two things will happen. Number one is SARS will now give you the more generous formula, which is a 33% formula of your medical spend. So instead of getting back what we discussed, 5, 10, 20%, in maximum cases 25%, but when you're a high earner, it can often be 0%. SARS will now give you 33% of your entire medical spend of the whole family. And this really unlocks massive amounts of money. So let's just give an example, and I'm going to keep numbers round. Say you have a family that's paying 10,000 Rand a month in their medical aid, which isn't so absurd in our country. I personally pay 9,000 Rand on a hospital plan for myself and my three kids, and my wife and I and our three kids, and we really don't get that much back for it. That's just our monthly medical aid contribution. So keeping numbers round, let's say it's 10,000 Rand. Now we have our out-of-pocket expenses. Out-of-pocket expenses, and once again, in our case, we on just the hospital plan, every therapy, every OT, speech, and the remedial assistive learning, and everything that we are spending on our family is an out-of-pocket expense that Medicare is not covering. And what we do is, we, as mentioned before, always submit everything to the medical aid. I know the medical aid is not going to cover, but at least then I've now got that on my out-of-pocket expenses on my medical aid tax certificate. And in our case, it comes out to be about roughly 4,000 Rand a month. So now I've spent 120,000 Rand in my medical aid contribution, an additional 48,000 Rand in my out-of-pocket expenses. That's a total of 168,000 Rand. Commonly, before applying a medical condition, SARS will give me back roughly maybe 10-15% of that. I'll get maybe 16 to 20,000 Rand. Now, if there's someone in my family that's struggling with and in my case, it's auditory processing, which is creating a remedial need, and now my family personally will qualify for 33%, and I'll be able to unlock 33% of 168,000 Rand, which takes me to a rebate of about roughly 56,000 Rand exactly, more or less. And that's a game changer when giving my family the best shot at getting the most professional help and assistance. When I know I can get 33% back on that, it really, really makes a massive difference. The next piece of magic, and this is really magic, because school fees is commonly an educational expense. But now, if my child now needs to go to a remedial learning, and say the remedial school is costing me 10,000 Rand, or I send or a family with navigating autism, they connect with Ilana and her brilliant team, and they're now paying for ABA therapy and the many other expenses that comes with it. That you can now qualify for 33% of that spend as well. It's not exactly 33%. What happens is if the remedial school fees is 10,000 Rand, and regular school fees in the government school down the road is 1,000 Rand. So I'll take 10,000 minus 1,000, which is 9,000 Rand times 12, taking me to 110,000 Rand. And now I can get back 33% of that, which takes me to roughly 40,000 Rand, which once again, I'm now getting my 55,000 Rand on my medical aid tax certificate, and I'm getting an additional 40,000 Rand on my school fees. And this is really a 95,000 Rand medical rebate in my tax return, changes the game for me personally. And I cannot encourage enough a family to take advantage of this. Once again, we don't know how long this opportunity is going to be around for. There's a lot of talk about nationalizing government health, and the first thing that's going to go is the medical rebates in for medical aids. And you know, we the future is unpredictable, but right now there's available in your upcoming tax return. There's a massive opportunity which really every family should take advantage of. In total, what can families get back? In our example, the example I gave, a family was able to get back 95,000 Rand in just 1 year. And we're about to discuss how we're going to get 95,000 Rand in the last 3 years. Hang on for that. But it's hard to know in total because every family is different. Every family's financial situation is different, and your medical spend is different. But and also, important to note, you cannot claim back more money than you've spent, than you've paid SARS. So in many cases, you can wipe out your entire PAYE. Obviously, you can't claim back more than your PAYE, the amount of tax that you've paid over the last year. One point that comes to mind, another opportunity to claim back, I'm going to mention a few others that just come to mind now, is travel. If travel to therapy or to school fees or to school is significant, and significant for by SARS is more than a 10-kilometer route, one is able to claim back on their school fees as well. I'm not going to go into how to do that logbook. Obviously, for a parent to now think about how to do it can be very, very daunting. And in very short, I'll just say you can use a Google Maps to get that route times by the school times by the days of the school year, and that can create a logbook for you. So there are ways to get around to doing a travel book without it becoming a nightmare for parents which are already navigating so much in their life. Other examples, we've mentioned therapies, we've mentioned travel, but if there's assistive devices or specific toys which are recommended by the occupational therapist or by any professional, that can now qualify. A great example is before December holidays, my daughter's speech therapist was insistent that we either send my daughter to online speech therapy, which was not going to happen over December holidays, or we had to get a very expensive speech software together with an iPad. The iPad is now claimable. This expensive software is also now claimable at 33%. So that's another example which comes to mind. At Stratfin, when Ilana and myself discovered this opportunity, we took it to market because we saw how many families are totally unfamiliar with this opportunity. And the first thing we did was, okay, we have a family that was unfamiliar with this. How are we going to help them not just in this coming tax year, but how are we going to help them in what happened in the past? And Ilan spent many, many hours in working out how to do a backdated claim. And the first thing we do for all our clients is a backdated claim. And we can go back at least 3 years, and in many cases, even more. But what we'll do is if a family comes forward and they've got a child with autism, you know, and I know that autism didn't happen in January 2026 when the child joined their specialized school. We know they were born with it. And what we'll do is we'll do a backdated claim on whatever medical spend there was in the past, and we'll be able to claim back 33% of the medical spend, and that's the medical aid contribution, out-of-pocket expenses, and school fees if applicable. The next thing we do, because we always want to get the maximum refund, is we have a holistic approach. We look at what mom's earning, what dad's earning, what each one of them are paying for, paying in their taxes, and then we'll do the claim. Sometimes we'll do a little bit of open heart surgery and remove what happened in the one spouse's name and put the claim in the other spouse's name, or even or even divide. We'll do the school fees in the mom's name and the medical aid in the dad's name. We really invested in getting the best outcome, and we'll do the claim in the way we'll get the more favorable outcome, and that we can also do backdated. I actually had a family that were unfamiliar with this opportunity, and the mom was a home mom looking after three children with remedial needs, all in school. And because they didn't set it up right, they were getting back nothing in their tax return. We then got involved, and we were able to claim back 450,000 Rand before even doing the upcoming tax year, just in backdated claims. So once again, it's so important to have a full holistic approach when doing these claims. Lastly, because accessing these claims can be quite daunting, and you need to get a SARS form called an RTRDD, and it needs to be filled out by it needs to be filled out by a medical professional, and then SARS are very picky about who filled it out, and that depends on what the diagnosis is. So what we do is we assign a client manager who's there to handhold the parent through collecting all the documents, getting the full stack of documents, the school fees, the statements from the doctor, the letters from each therapist, the RTRDD. We pre-fill all of that. We then work together the with the schools and the medical professionals in getting the forms done right, because if you don't get it right, SARS will reject it, and there's hundreds of thousands of families out there which are battling with SARS to get these claims and do them right. And that's why we've got a team of about 20 people on our team who's dedicated just to our medical tax back offering, helping the parents and really taking an admin nightmare, which no parent navigating autism can really do with the amount that they have on their plates, and really doing that in office and assisting parents all the way from claiming the documents. And then our account managers are there to play ping pong with SARS until we get that claim over the line. Claims can take sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 2 months, and we've had claims which have taken 11 months to get over the line. Obviously, SARS are doing their utmost not to pay, and that's why you need to have someone on your team who knows how to play the game. We are world class at tax ping pong, which is a new sport which I invented, but we will win every single game of tax ping pong. We have about a 95% success rate, and we'll gladly assist anyone who would like assistance. Obviously, our team are dedicated to helping fellow South African parents. If you would like advice, if you would like to talk, we're all there. We're happy to help. And obviously, if you'd like our services, we'll be glad to assist you as well. Our fee is 33% of success. Sorry, 20% of success. And yeah, so if we manage to do a 50,000 Rand claim, the family will keep 40,000, and we'll then invoice 10,000 Rand. And it's at full risk to us. So if there's no success, there'll never be an invoice, and you only pay us once you've received the money. The money gets refunded into your account, and that's when you'll receive the invoice from us. So it really is a very risk-free opportunity. Also important, on once talking about risk, also important to note that when doing backdated claims, if you don't know how to do it, you are putting yourself at risk, because you can trigger an audit. We've worked out how to do it in a way that never triggers an audit. And as mentioned, we've done close to 1,000 clients in the last year. And we haven't triggered any audits. It's been safe, open heart surgery. But if we really do know what we're doing, and we know how to do it without it triggering any problems. We're also happy to work alongside your accountant, your tax practitioner, and really just there, happy to help. I'm gonna look at the Q&A at the moment. And before we do look at the Q&A, I just want to say we're not going to get through everything, but both myself and my team are happy to help, and as well as Ilana, your founder, all over the internet. You cannot miss Star Academy anywhere. Google Star Academy, you'll find Ilana's details. And yeah, Ilana's also there and happy to help anyone. And really, it's been a beautiful partnership together with Ilana, and we really grateful and privileged to host this webinar together. And I really hope it was informative and helpful.
Thank you so much,
Okay, sure. Okay, let's look at the Q&A over here.
I've started to answer some questions. I have typed a couple of answers.
Amazing. Ilana, is there any specific question that you feel is helpful for everyone to hear?
Yeah, so I answered quite a few of them.
Sorry.
You know what? There was an interesting question that one of the participants asked, Dovi, that I'm actually thinking myself, I'd love to know the answer, and I think it's for you. She asked, can we claim for supplements Ilana spoke of? To my knowledge, I don't think so, but maybe you have an answer?
Ilan, don't you have great news on this?
Very good news. That was actually one of my value-added tips, Ilana, that I was going to add, especially for your amazing presentation and how diets and nutrition and supplements can really help kids who have autism. You mentioned like GABA and probiotic and quercetin and all those. So the good news is that if those items have been prescribed by a doctor or a naturopath or a homeopath, those all can be claimed as part of your medical tax credits. There is an element of over-the-counter medication that can't be claimed, like if you go and buy Panado, but if the medical professional, the treating doctor, does prescribe any of these supplements, then those supplements are allowed to be claimed, and you'll get 33% of the cost back on those, which is so cool. Unbelievable. So a game changer.
I've ever heard. Game changer.
Yeah.
This
Big
is
game changer.
such a difference to so many families. Wow.
And I think, yeah, many people don't know about that. And, you can go and you can buy them. And, but, most people wouldn't think of even claiming them, but you are allowed to claim, and it's in the guide, the SARS guide.
Okay, Ilan, thanks for that. A question over here, can a speech therapist under the HPCSA sign an RTRDD even though they don't have their own personal practice?
If they are registered, then they have to put their registration number, and yeah, then they can sign the form and submit it. I think the requirement is that they have to be part of the HSPCA. That's the requirements according to legislation, even if they don't have a practice number, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and a part of that question, uh, can a speech therapist or occupational therapist sign off on a form? What have we seen in our journey of medical tax back?
So one of the elements of medical disability or medical conditions that you discussed is communication. And certainly a speech therapist will be able to sign on the communication side, um, you know, because they would be the treating medical specialists. But if it's for intellectual or physical or mental, generally SARS would like to see the specialists in those areas, whether it's a neurologist or a psychiatrist, a clinical psychologist. So generally, a speech therapist, as far as I've seen, will be able to sign on the communications element, but not necessarily on any of the others.
Amazing. Ilana, question for you. I see a lot of people in the chat are asking if they're able to get your presentation.
what they're able to do.
Yes, also thought of that. Yeah.
What they can do, and what I like to do, is they can book a consultation. I take down a comprehensive developmental history of the child. I have many parents who do consult with me. I am a parent coach, and then we can talk about their child specifically. So please contact us for that consultation. And Dovi and Ilan, I see that one of the parents said, and I'm very interested to know the answer myself, that she homeschools her child and she has a therapist that travels to her home and she has to pay for the travel costs. Can she claim from SARS for the travel costs of the therapist coming to the home to homeschool her child?
If I can answer that. So any therapists that you need to pay because of your child's condition, that's due to the condition and it's necessary for the condition, all those costs are claimable by the parent in their tax return. And it's, not even only therapies. If you've got a tutor or a facilitator or a scribe or somebody who does homework with your child because they need that concentration and that structure or that specialized learning, those can also be claimed, as well as any kind of incidental therapies, whether I think we've seen certain swimming or physical exercise type of activities, those can also be claimed. But certainly, if the therapist's costs include the travel, that will be part of the cost of the therapist and it can be claimed. And as a result, you'll be able to get 33% back of that total cost. It's very important that you show that you are paying for that therapy as well. So if you're the main member, it needs to come out of your bank account and you need to show that you're paying. SARS won't just accept a invoice or a statement. There also needs to be a proof of payment. And the guys at Stratfin, the account managers, they'll be able to guide you through each step of the way, what the requirements or burden of proof that each item requires. And it is very complicated. I must say it's not so simple. There's a lot of things that people need direction on, and a claim needs to really hit the bullseye. Otherwise, there's a lot of opportunities for SARS to deny it and reject it. And really, you don't want that to happen. You want your claim to be approved as quickly as possible.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm going to sandwich two questions into one. We have one question, a mom suffering from depression to the point that was actually hospitalized. Can that equal a claim, and can they claim on the hospitalization and the meds within that? And then a related question is, if there hasn't yet been a formal diagnosis of autism, but it's very clear that there's sensory issues, non-verbal, but no formal diagnosis just yet, how would those two things work with medical tax rebates?
Yeah, certainly on the person who's suffering from depression and has been hospitalized, that's very clear cut. The person would need to get the condition confirmed by their doctor. What's just important to note is that the condition has to, or the prognosis is that it's going to last more than 12 months. So if it's like a once off, which I don't think, that kind of a depression could necessarily be, but we're not medical specialists, so we can't say. But as long as the condition is going to last more than 12 months, then it's considered a condition that you can claim from SARS at that higher rate of 33%. If a diagnosis has not been done, okay, I don't know how you get, Ilana will be able to tell us how you get a autism diagnosis and to what extent, but certainly there has to be some form of diagnosis for the doctor to make in order for the claim to happen. Without a diagnosis by the medical doctor, there can't be any claim submitted to SARS. at that higher rate. It has to be a medical condition that's considered moderate to severe, and that's going to last or has lasted for more than 12 months.
Ilan, if I can just add to that, I have seen even when there wasn't a formal diagnosis, like a label, if a doctor signs that a person is being affected moderately and explains how they're being affected, that I've also seen to go through successfully. So I think it is worth a shot. So it's like it's a diagnosis. The doctor is signing off on the SARS form, and even though they haven't yet worked out what the label is it autism or whatever label professionals like to put on things, that could also still work.
I
Would you agree
actually
with that?
want to add something about getting a diagnosis. For the parents who have a young developing child and they're worried about red flags to autism, you can go online and actually print the MCHAT-R. That's the list of diagnostic criteria for autism, and take that list of red flags to your pediatrician. Book an hour, go over the concerns and those red flags with your pediatrician and ask him to make a diagnosis. Parents are waiting way too long in line for a neurologist and a developmental specialist for an autism diagnosis. Elaine, a neurologist is authorized to make a formal diagnosis. So is a developmental specialist. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to these doctors, but while you're waiting for your appointment, which sometimes can be 3 months or 6 months, make an appointment with your pediatrician so you can get quick access, because early intervention is key. Your pediatrician can also make a diagnosis in the meantime. And so it's very important that, you print those red flags and then consult your pediatrician if you have a young developing child and you are worried. But one of the parents was asking, what will they get from a consultation with me? So just very quickly, I'll take your child's background history. We're going to talk about their specific unique learning needs. I'm going to explain how we can address those unique learning needs. I'll also make recommendations depending on where you live in South Africa, which doctors you should consult for treatment as well as for diagnosis. Over to you guys.
Amazing. I'm just going to end with a closing message. And then I do want to, and I know we haven't gone into everything, but I want to say is that take advantage and be optimistic, because there's many cases where you think it's not going to work and it does work. You think, oh no, my child only sees a speech therapist, it's not going to go through. It very likely will go through, and you've got nothing to lose. Take advantage and just be optimistic. There's a lot to be optimistic about. There's one of Ilana's strong quotes was around that of like, just be excited, optimistic that of the future. And I just think that you should, on all fronts, you should do that. On the financial front and on the recovery, definitely do that. And I just want to one horror question I saw: a tax practitioner said that the school fees was not claimable for whatever reason. It's not true. It really upsets me when people are misguided by tax practitioners and accountants who haven't taken the time to familiarize themselves with the ins and outs of the tax laws. And many times, because the SARS call it a disability, accountants and tax practitioners are saying, well, your child's still functioning, then don't qualify. And that's simply not true. SARS call it an impairment or disability on a moderate level. So that's very important. So once again, with that in mind, really just reach out to someone on our team. And it's really there will be a message will go out later. It can't hurt to just ask a question, have a conversation. And I can see there's at least 80 questions that I haven't gotten to here, but someone on the team will be
91 questions.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
they can email them to you.
Yeah, there will be a WhatsApp which will go out later, and we will be doing first come first serve. Because there have been over 800 signups for this webinar. So if you want to be assisted, just reply to that WhatsApp and follow the prompts. And if you would like Alana's help, as mentioned, you cannot miss Alana on the internet. You'll find her everywhere. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alana. And
I wanted to thank you and Ilan for your wonderful presentation and just for the wonderful work that you do. It's a very big financial burden on parents to raise a child with special learning needs or autism. And the fact that you're bringing this information and that you help parents with this claim makes a very big difference, because finances are on everybody's mind. It's really top of the list. And to add to what you said, Dorvi, think good and it'll be good, right? When you think good, you'll come up with solutions. When you're negative and you don't try, you're not going to find any solution. So we'll leave you with think good and it'll be good.
Thank you. Beautiful closing message. Good night, parents.